Hello, this is Dr. Mike, and welcome to the Peds and Pop Podcast. On today's episode, Dr. Cary and I discuss what we did over the Memorial Day weekend and some big news for East Lake Pediatrics. Then we will reflect on the tragic events in Texas and suggest ways parents can prepare themselves and their families for school emergencies. As we enter the summer, we also want to touch on tips to stay safe while having fun in the sun. Finally, we will wrap things up by discussing what we have been streaming lately and Dr. Mike's experience at Star Wars Celebration a few years ago. Thanks for listening, and we hope you enjoy the show. Welcome to episode 4 of our East Lake Pediatrics Peds and Pop Podcast. We have Dr. Cary back with us. After last week, we had Jen subbing in. And how are you doing today?
I'm good.
Yeah? How are things? How was your Memorial Day weekend?
Good. It's pretty chill. A lot of swimming pool time and yard work time. Just hanging out.
Yeah, I am not one to do yard work. Are you
I hate it. It's like the bane of my existence, but my husband won't do it. So
sometimes you
just
gotta go out there.
Gotta suck it up and,
Yikes. So what yard work were you doing?
Mostly like pulling weeds, trimming back some like little branches and stuff.
Right.
I had to replace some of those. We don't have mulch. We have those pebbly rock things.
Sure.
Go buy more of that and put over some bare areas. Just touch up stuff.
Okay. Yeah. Still not delightful though.
No.
Yeah. Good thing you waited until May to do it. Nice and hot out.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Got to get my suntan. Just kidding. Don't get suntans, guys.
Vitamin D then.
Yeah.
There you go. Awesome. Well, I had a pretty good weekend. I did not do any yard work. But I got to tell you, I had a run of events starting on Thursday that was pretty outstanding. So, and I know you probably weren't there, but I went and saw Top Gun Maverick at like 10 o'clock on Thursday night. Mm-hmm. And that movie is awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is like getting a gigantic bucket of USA and eating it with a spoon for like 3 hours.
Brian took Bruce.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Bruce is 4 for our listeners.
Right.
He sat through the whole movie with his dad because that's how cool the airplanes are.
Yeah.
It's what I was told. I didn't know.
I know. It's so awesome. And you know what else? And I'm not going to spoil anything for Maverick, but in Top Gun, the original, it always harkened back. There's a little bit of Star Wars in there for me. And the one scene is when Tom Cruise, or Maverick, is flying, and I think he has Merlin in the back after Goose died. And the guy's like, "Hey, Maverick, the guy's coming closer. He's coming closer." He's like, "I'm going to draw him in and hit the brakes. They're going to fly right by." And he's like, "What?" And then he hits the brakes, and the MiG flies over, and then he tags it. But that's, to me, was taken right from Return of the Jedi when Luke and Leia are on the speeder bikes in the Forest Moon, and the stormtroopers or the scout troopers are shooting at him, and he slams the brakes on the bike, and they go around him, and then he smokes them after that. So I think there's some of that is in the thread of the new movie, which I could see, which I thought, well done.
It's a nice tie-in.
Oh, yeah.
All the amazing things all in one.
Oh, yeah. And then, I was planning on, having to watch Obi-Wan. It was, usually they drop it at 3 in the morning Eastern time because they drop it at midnight Pacific time. But they dropped it 9 p.m. Pacific time. So just walked right in and watched 2 episodes of Obi-Wan Kenobi, which, totally exceeded my expectations. So I was buzzing after about 2 in the morning on Friday. I was fired up and really had a good time. And then I was watching the SEC baseball tournament, and the Gators did great. They went all the way to the final. Of course, they lost to Tennessee, which that is the worst.
That's never good.
No, never good. But, as a result of that, they're hosting a regional. And so what that means is that they'll have a tournament this weekend with Oklahoma, Central Michigan, and Liberty. And it's a double elimination tournament. Whoever wins that tournament will then go on to super regionals. So that should be good. It's a pretty tough draw, but I think we'll be okay. And then last night, I went to see the band Churches at Janus Landing.
Okay.
Well, it's Janus Live now. But, okay, so that's down in St. Pete.
Yeah.
And, I go in, and it's great. I went with my wife and my daughter, Lily. Of course, she's 17, right? And she has an ID that says not 21 until her birthday. It's written on there in red. She gives the ID to the guy to go through. He looks at it, starts counting on his fingers, and then just put a big stamp on her finger that says over 21 on her wrist. So I was like,
that's
okay.
Good. Right in front of her dad.
Yeah, that's right. So, but don't worry. She was very honest. Hey, look what happened to me. So she thought that was funny. And I thought that was a little bit of a lapse in security.
That is pretty funny.
But I always know when a concert is going to be great because of what they do in the pre-concert playlist, you know? So I walk in and the first song they're playing is Burn by The Cure, which is like a obscure song. It's from the Crow soundtrack in 1994. And then they played Spellbound by Susie and the Banshees, which I went and I looked it up. I couldn't remember, but I was the first time I was at Janus Landing was August 22nd, 1987. I was 13 and I saw Susie and the Banshees there.
How did you find that date? Like, how did you narrow that down?
Because I knew it was in 87 or ish around, and it was like the first. No, there's a thing called setlist.fm.
Yeah.
So I just typed in Susie and the Banshees, and then I looked through it, and I was like, okay, did they play? And I didn't remember. It goes back
that far.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. So I saw the set list
for history.
Exactly, right there. So then you can do it for any band you want. You know, I mean, I guess. I mean, any band I've ever.
I've looked on there for concerts I'm going to see what songs are going to be played, but I didn't realize.
Is that right?
List back, you know.
That's a good point. I don't do that because I like to go in fresh.
I like to listen and make sure I know all the songs we're going to play, so I'm like prepared to sing along.
So you know what I do? I just make sure I know all the songs before I go. So like for the churches, I knew a lot of their songs, but not all of them. So I just had their catalog on loop for a while.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go see Whiskey Myers coming up in July.
I don't know them.
So yeah, they're like this southern kind of country rock band.
Okay.
So
me and Rosie are going to the Backstreet Boys in June.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So don't worry, I already know all their songs. I don't need to practice
that. Yeah, I wonder what the pre concert playlist is it for Backstreet Boys.
I don't know. I'm sure it's awesome though.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, but so they played She Sells Sanctuary by The Cult. They played Killing Moon by Echo and the Bunnymen. There are some others. Love Will Tear Us Apart by Joy Division. So anyways, the concert was awesome. They had a band open up called Fan Club Wallet, and it was like their first time. They drove all the way down from Canada just to start the tour with them because they just picked them up. And they were these young kids, and they were just like, kind of like, you could tell they were really excited because, I mean, Janus Live isn't huge, but they're like, hey, this is the biggest crowd we've ever played in front of, you know, which was great. And right as that's happening, I'm looking over through, like, I'm facing the stage, but through some of the awnings that they have, you can see it's just black as night out there. And it's not nighttime yet. And I'm looking on the radar, and it's like lightning, rain. And it was about that time it starts to rain, and my wife and Lily were looking at the radar. They're like, we're out. So they left. And I'm sitting there. You know, they just didn't want to get rained on, I suppose, which was probably the smartest thing to do. And I'm sitting there, and it just unloads. I mean, like rain hard, and it's lightning out. And I'm like, I really, you know, I don't mind the rain. I don't like being out in the lightning. That's just not very smart. But, you know, I probably should have made a better decision. But anyways, it was raining and raining. And as I'm thinking to myself, you know, this really is kind of silly for me to be out here in the rain. I just, you know, hopefully nobody I know sees me out here. And right as I say that, someone taps me on the shoulder and goes, are you a pediatrician? And so I'm like, and I think to myself, well, that's pretty specific, right?
Yeah.
You know, so but luckily I guess they just didn't jump right in, and they go, are you Dr. Jordan? I go, yes. And then the lady next to the lady goes, oh yeah, our kids see Jen. Oh, okay, great. So anyways, that was fun. So there you go. My cover was blown after that.
I know.
Right?
You think if you go to St. Pete, man, you might...
Yeah, I'm out, you know. But, so the show was really good, lived up to my expectations. So that kind of capped off, aside from the rain and lightning, capped off a pretty great Memorial Day weekend for me and my family and stuff. Anything else you've been up to lately?
Not a whole lot, I guess. Kind of gearing up for some summer travels and things, making some plans. But... Okay,
that's nice. Yeah, this is the time for us to travel, right? Everyone's... kind of asleep at the switch as far as getting their physicals in on time because the procrastination bug bites everybody until mid-July. So,
but if you need your physical, come now. We got time.
Yeah, you want to call up your pediatrician and schedule your physicals now because this is typically a dead period for them, and it's always a good time to get in so we can see you if you're due for a school physical. And other than that, I went and saw some of the hockey games, which is good. So I'm excited that they are advancing into the Eastern Conference Finals. So they looked really good the last series and totally smoked and swept Florida, which is always nice. And we do have some news starting in September. Hopefully, we are expanding our locations out into Oldsmar.
And so what will be happening with our East Lake locations?
Well, so East Lake, as you got, most people know, we have two buildings in East Lake, 1 and 2, 1 fish and 2 fish, right? So the original building we leased starting in August 16th, 2004. So it's going to be 18 years coming up here in August. And about a year ago, or maybe a year and a half ago, my landlords, which is the OB group, Lerner Rudolph and McCants, et cetera, Dr. Lerner came over and said, hey, listen, we want to give you some notice, but we're expanding. We're going to need to go into your space. We're not going to be able to renew your lease. So in 6 months, which was last year, they were going to start moving in. And then a little bit later, they came up and said, hey, listen, things aren't moving forward like we want. Would you like to stay another year? And I said, of course, because at that point, I really hadn't had time to make a good decision as to where we were going to go. So this bought me some time. And so initially, we were thinking of maybe just moving everything into East Lake 2, but then didn't feel like we would be able to have enough space. So we started looking around for a new location. And based on where our parents live and our patients are, kind of halfway between here and West Chase seemed like a good spot to put a building. So that way there's, people that are traveling from West Chase and Oldsmar and stuff like that would have access to a closer location. And the people between East Lake and Palm Harbor and Oldsmar could go either way. And then obviously those who are west of this office in Palm Harbor would probably want to go to still stay at our Palm Harbor office. So we ended up finding a building that was for sale and we bought it. And right now we're working on the build out, as they say. So there's a lot of demolition and stuff that goes on with that. And we need to make sure that we get all that done. And we had to go through permitting, and that with COVID and everything took forever. So right now we're at a spot where we're moving forward with all the construction. That's moving forward. So we're hoping that we're going to be able to open on September 1st. And if not, then we'll probably have to make do with having everything over at East Lake 2, because that's not going away. We're keeping our East Lake 2 location.
I was going to say, so we're still doing sick visits and well checks at all locations.
Yeah, all of our locations. Yeah, and how that pattern sets up is going to be probably to be determined. But right now, when all is said and done, we'll have the Trinity offices, we'll have the Palm Harbor office, and we'll have the Oldsmar location. Just the Palm Harbor East Lake 1 is just going to go away, but we'll still have the larger East Lake 2 location. So that's going to be pretty exciting. Now, sadly, we have to transition to a topic that we have already covered, I think, in the past 2 podcasts, but talking to your kids about violence and what that is about. And obviously, with the tragedy that occurred last week, this is a much more serious discussion than what happened in the Oscars or what Mike Tyson did. But we feel that it's important that maybe we reiterate some of those topics and maybe dive deeper into that in case you may have some questions of how to handle these types of issues that are now, unfortunately, becoming a part of our society. This week felt like it may be important to discuss for parents, like, what can you do? What do you need to do to make sure that you're prepared in case the unthinkable happens and there's a lockdown situation at your child's school? There are a couple of things that, we recommend that you think about and speak with your school about, and they break it down, and we'll have this in our handout about how to talk to your school and know what's happening if there's a lockdown. And the 3 basic things can be broken down into ABC. You want to make sure that you're asking how you would be reunited with your child if there was an emergency. You want to make sure if you need to, you bring any extra medicine or supplies that they may need, and complete a backpack card. And that card is also available on the link where you're just filling out information. You put in your child's backpack, you hold on to it. That way they'll have your contact information and be able to reach out to you. As far as going forward with that, Dr. Cary, do you have any advice regarding, how do you help your child go through this? Like, what do you think about as a parent? What do you need to know or ask your school as far as their emergency policy in case something happens?
Yeah, I think communication is big, and knowing all the different mechanisms that your child's school uses to communicate so that you can be keyed in on those. A lot of the public schools will get you in multiple ways: emails, phone calls, like automated phone calls, Facebook posts even. So knowing all the different means of communication that your school has and making sure you're registered for those. Thank God I've never had that situation with my own kids, but things like weather alerts where they're, have to change the drop-off pickup mechanisms, things like that, they will use those. So being keyed in with your child's school and all the ways they communicate, because some of them you have to sign up for, and also knowing, what your school's safety measures are. And I think, again, a lot of schools these days have fences and gates and pretty secure login systems and things for visitors, but, nothing's fail safe, and just being aware of what they have, what their procedures are, and knowing, do they have staff on campus? Again, I think most all the public schools have a school safety officer, whether they're, an official sheriff or just a trained officer through the schools, but they have staff on hand. No, nothing's perfect, but I think at least for me as a parent, knowing that my daughter's school, it's Mr. Jones, and seeing Mr. Jones every day, knowing he's out there, knowing he's involved is kind of a peace of mind for me. So, as a parent, it's good to know what your schools have in place, because lets you get your kids to school every day with a little more peace of mind, and also know how are you going to be informed if something did happen.
Right. And I think it's also important that the parents have to remember that they are the advocate for their child. And you want to make sure that you're out there being the voice for your child and understanding the policy and procedures for an emergency, make sure that they make sense to you. And if something needs to be shorn up, to make sure that you're putting your child in the safest possible place when they're in school. That way, you want to make sure you're doing all you can do. The school's doing all they can do. You're all on the same page so that if something like this happens, everyone is prepared to keep everyone as safe as possible.
That's right. Some of you may have heard me say that, as parents, sometimes we have to be bulldogs. Be a polite bulldog, but sometimes you have to be a bulldog. So like Dr. Jordan said, never be afraid to advocate for your child's needs and speak up if you think something's not being followed the way it's supposed to or could be improved.
Right. And just to review, like we had spoken previously with the kids that are young, you just want to, if they're asking questions, just be vague and say something bad happens, be supportive. Be reassuring. And, the older kids, you just gauge their maturity level, but you can be a little more specific. But you really just need to offer explanation of what happened and reassurance that everything is being done to not have that situation reoccur.
And I think something else you can, again, with the older kids too, that is important, maybe in a bigger picture prevention aspect, is I know the schools talk about this too, but just reinforcing with them, like the concept of see something, say something, because there are things they may see or hear, and they can never be too careful. So I know even my own child has had situations at school where she heard something, she wasn't comfortable with it, and you tell them who they talk to and the procedures for that, and the school took care of it. But just as we have to be advocates, and unfortunately or unfortunately, the reality of the situation is sometimes we have to teach our kids to be advocates too. So being honest with them in an age-appropriate way and teaching them how to speak up if they feel uncomfortable with the situation. Yeah,
that's very important. Kind of transitioning to other safety issues, it's getting to summertime now. We have spoken in the past a little bit about sunscreen and sun safety, and making sure that you are applying sunscreen correctly and using SPF. I usually say 30 or higher. Mm-hmm. Typically, they'll say 15 or higher, but I think 30 is probably a little bit better. Once you get past 50...
I was going to say, past 30, they say, it's kind of, they're just selling you on a higher number. But,
right.
30 at least, and then we want to reapply,
right.
every 90 minutes or so, and be careful with those babies, we always talk about don't put sunscreen on babies under 6 months, and that's not because sunscreen is, magically going to hurt them, but it's because we want to keep those babies out of enough direct sunlight where they would even need sunscreen. So
right.
Shades and shirts and pants are your friend when you're a baby, and then our older kids, got to just keep the sunscreen on.
Yeah, and I think that just if you're looking at kids under 6 months, what Dr. Cary says is 100% correct. In the event, I always tell them, in the event, your choice is your child's going to get sunburned or you're going to apply a little bit of sunscreen. It's fine in those situations to use sunscreen in someone 6 months of age and younger where their skin is exposed.
Right.
But yeah, we don't want to use sunscreen as a way to prolong your exposure to sun. We wanted to use it to protect you from sun.
Right.
And you have to reapply it. And despite what my kids constantly making fun of me, you got to put it on 30 minutes before you start. So getting to the beach and putting your sunscreen on jams you up.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
Dr. Jordan wouldn't be very proud of me. I don't. Sometimes I'm like his daughters, I guess.
Right. But
better late than never.
That's right. Yeah, it's better late than never. But if you can get it on before you head out there, make sure that you are doing so, about 30 minutes in advance and reapplying. And for an average size young person, about an ounce of sunscreen is a good amount. But you just want to make sure that you're doing that and protect them, because one sunburn can cause a problem later in life, and we want to avoid that as much as we can. The other thing is, with swimming and pools and everything in Florida, it's very important that we have our guard up for drownings, as that's the number one cause of death in children between the ages of 1 and 4, aside from like birth defects and things like that. Again, we'll have these information sheets available in the notes of our podcast here, but you want to make sure that you're creating layers of protection to keep your toddler safe. And you want to have like a separate barrier that's 4 feet high. You want to make sure that it opens outward, self-latches. You got to make sure the latch is more than 54 inches tall.
Same password, they can reach it.
Right. So just keeping them away from the pool. You got to make sure when you're opening the latch and the gate, it should be self-closing, but make sure that it closes on its own. Make sure you don't have anything tempting inside the fence. So like the pool toys and stuff should all be on the outside.
Right.
And do your best to make sure that you are constantly putting up barriers to keep your child out of the water. And if you ever lose sight of your child, and this happens to everyone, there's always going to be moments in your life where you've misplaced your child. Make sure the first place you look is in the water, right? You got to go look in the pool. You got to make sure make sure that you check there first. And it's a good idea to learn CPR for infants and children. You want to make sure you are a touch-safe distance when you're swimming with kids that don't know how to swim, so that at any point you can grab them and bring them out of the water if something goes in the wrong direction. We typically don't recommend floaties for kids, because that it can lead to this false sense of security that you can swim without them, or, hey, my kid's in the floaty, I'm going to go over here and get a drink or do whatever. And next thing you know, you lose track of time and something awful could happen. And don't forget, you got to make sure that like any sort of water. So like you got to keep toddlers out of the bathroom, because they can fall headfirst into the toilet. If you have like, fountains or bird baths or things like that, you got to get rid of those or make sure that they can't get to them. And I think one of the things most importantly that I always recommend is make sure you kind of assign like a lifeguard if you're going to a place where there's unobstructed access to water. So, say, okay, I'm going to watch for the next 15 minutes and then you're going to watch them for the next 15 minutes. And you got to put your phone away, and you got to really just concentrate on making sure the child stays safe, and even make a card so you're handed to give this physical kind of handoff that they know what's happening. I don't know if you have any other things to add to that, Dr.
No,
Cary.
I try to keep it simple a bit. There's a lot of things that we can and should do, but my biggest things is please invest in the 4-foot safety fences. Please, please, please.
Right.
And do not trust an alarm on your door or an alarm in your pool. We need the physical barrier.
Yeah,
even if your kids are great swimmers. My kids started swimming practically before they could walk, but we still need to keep things safe, because kids get brave and don't know their limits, and things can go wrong. So.
That's right, yeah. The thing about pool fences that you had mentioned, the research has shown that they can prevent over half of the drowning deaths. So it's very important to have that barrier up to prevent these accidents from happening.
And if your kids spend a lot of time at a grandparent's house and they have a pool, again, you can't force them to do something, but you can strongly encourage. So,
right.
Just think it's anywhere your kid spends a lot of time with water, that's a good recommendation.
Yeah. And, now it's being summer, I was thinking that I would not be seeing so much flu in the office.
Well, I think COVID has messed up all the viral seasons for a while here, right?
I would think so.
We can't ever know what to expect anymore, it seems.
Yeah.
Because it's been raging.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. The amount of flu I saw the week before last, I had more flus in the same day than I think I had during the H1N1 pandemic. It was ridiculous how many flu kids we're seeing. Is that what your
it's definitely been a lot of flu.
Yeah, and
still some COVID too.
Yeah, the COVID is just kind of like
well.
percolating a little bit, isn't it? We're seeing those are kind of trickling in here and there. I haven't seen anyone that's been really sick with it. Have you?
No, and even with the flu, luckily, I think we haven't been seeing people landing in the hospital, but you never want to be the one in a million. So
right,
we got to stay safe and keep up with our flu shots every year, because like Dr. Jordan said, sometimes you never know when the flu is actually going to hit. You can't assume, it's not October or November anymore. It's
Yeah.
not going to be flu season. So
It's weird, and we're still actively giving flu vaccines, and they're very safe and the best way to protect against getting this illness that is very disruptive and miserable when you get it.
mm-hmm.
So I think that's about it for what's going on in the office. Anything else interesting going on? Have you come across anything that you've seen or watched on TV or anything that keeps your interest?
Well, Brian, my husband, and I just watched The Dropout on Hulu, which is about Elizabeth Holmes, the Theranos company. So I had read the book. We watched the show. It's a very good show.
Yeah.
So even if you didn't read all about it, like if you're not a nerd like me, it's still interesting and a good dramatization, good acting. So
that's good. Yeah, I do like seeing those kind of dramatizations of real life events. Sometimes it's interesting. And what was the premise of that one again?
She was a Stanford college dropout who decided she had this idea to make a machine that could test all these blood tests off of a drop of blood from your finger, despite that most anyone with any knowledge on the matter thought it was unrealistic. She somehow, scammed her way into all these hundreds of millions of dollars of investors and this company that never really had a working prototype, and she rode that wave for 10 years, until she finally got uncovered.
Really?
And now has been, been convicted, and I think is awaiting sentencing for her crime of being fraudulent, taking people's money.
That's awful. Well, one of the things I didn't mention earlier that what was also going on was Star Wars Celebration. I'm sure you were riveted to that, right? That happened in. Is that
like a Disney World thing they do, or
no? It's they hadn't done it in like 3 years. It's kind of like this. It's like a convention, like a comic book convention,
Oh, okay.
But it's done. They had them in Orlando. I went there once in Orlando.
Is that when you met Mark Hamill?
That is. I met Mark Hamill that weekend, which was for a Star Wars fan. If you haven't been or haven't paid attention to it, it is just wall to wall, like thousands and thousands of people dressed up in costumes and all the different vendors, and you have all the people are around. It's fantastic. So that was streaming all weekend. A little disappointed, though. They weren't streaming all the big panels. So like they had this Mandalorian panel, and they had all the people there, which wasn't streamed, and then they showed like all these clips that were only there for people in the audience. They wouldn't show all these clips, so
we gotta give you a reason to buy the
I suppose,
in-person tickets.
But that's the thing is when I went to Orlando, like okay, let me go to you couldn't get into those panels. They had a whole thing where 3 days you can start sleeping 3 days in advance.
You had to camp out
to get these things. But what ended up being for that main panel, this was in 2017. At the end, right after Princess Leia died, Carrie Fisher. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the panel, they panned over and John Williams was there with the Orlando Orchestra and started playing the Princess Leia's theme.
Oh, geez.
So that was like nerd heaven.
Yeah.
You have the maestro out there playing the Star Wars songs live in person. That's it. That's like the pinnacle. So, and he actually he's 90.
Wow.
Yeah, he's 90 years old. And he did that. The same thing this time. He came back and wrote the theme song for Obi-Wan, because every kind of main character has a theme, except for Han Solo and Obi-Wan.
It's
apparently,
like walk-on music.
It's walk-up music, yeah. And so when Solo came out, he wrote the music for Solo for his Han's theme, and then he did for Obi-Wan Kenobi, which was cool. And then they wrapped up the first part of the last season of Better Call Saul. And man, that was intense and awesome. Have you ever watched that?
I have not. I never watched. What was the first
Breaking
one?
Bad.
Breaking Bad. Yeah, no, I never watched any of those.
Man, unbelievable. The writing in those stories and those shows are so unique and funny and, a little bit dark. But I'm looking forward to the next part of that season. And the other thing I'm looking forward to is the last season of Stranger Things. But I think they're breaking that up into 2 separate seasons, which they did with Ozark also.
Okay. These are all shows I've never watched. I've always heard good things about them.
Oh, yeah. Ozark the last season was just out of this world. Yeah. I loved it. And you know what I like about it? You get, anytime you have these big shows and stuff, there's always this requisite backlash that people feel like they have to say they don't like it or whatever. Mm-hmm. But because of being able to watch it like on my own, I don't have to pay attention to that nonsense.
That's true.
And so I just was able to sit there, okay, I'm going to watch this and enjoy it. And I thought the way it wrapped up was pretty great. And I'm loving the way Better Call Saul's heading. We'll see about Stranger Things. Yeah. I'll have to go through that. But I think I'm going to be stuck in the same situation. You go and watch it, and then you got to wait again for the next, next little bit of what's happening. So Well, that's what's going on with us. We hope you guys are having a great beginning to your summer and a healthy summer and a safe summer. If you have any issues, call us or text us to make an appointment. We're available if you need us. And like we said, it's a great time to start getting your school physicals done. So if you haven't made your appointments, call your pediatrician and make them and get those out of the way so you're not stung by the rush of everyone else that's been procrastinating and having fun in June and July.
Yeah.
All right, guys, we'll talk to you on the next one.
Bye.
Stay healthy, my friends. Thank you for listening to the Peds and Pop Podcast from East Lake Pediatrics, featuring Dr. Mike and Dr. Cary. This podcast is for general information purposes only and is not intended for treatment purposes or to promote any products, treatment, or services. This podcast is not a substitute or replacement for and should not be construed as professional or medical advice. In no way does listening to this podcast or reading, emailing, or interacting on social media with our content establish a patient-physician relationship. You should note that the podcast and social media are not private forums, and any exchanges and information posted, shared, and/or discussed will be available to the public. You should not share, post, or discuss protected health information on these forums, as the information will not be protected by the federal or state privacy laws. If you have any questions about your child's medical condition or treatment, please seek the advice of your healthcare provider. If there is a medical emergency, please call 911. For more information about East Lake Pediatrics, please visit our website at www.eastlakepediatrics.com or like our Facebook page at East Lake Pediatrics. The Peds and Pop Podcast was produced by Mike Jordan and is hosted by board-certified pediatricians Dr. Mike Jordan and Dr. Cary Unks. The music used in this episode was also produced, written, and performed by Mike Jordan.